Roll call, please. Yep.
It should be working now. Or are you marking it, Michelle? Okay, Michelle's marking it. Supervisors Beth, Mauer, and Boyd Frederick are excused.
We will now have the State of the County address. Executive Jim Kreuser, step up. Thank you. Thank you.
Counselor. Taking it in for a moment. Good evening, Chairman O'Day, Vice Chair Uhas, ladies and gentlemen of the County Board, elected officials, county employees, and citizens of Kenosha County. It is my privilege to join you tonight to deliver my final State of the County address to this distinguished body. Since last year's address, we've lost one former member of this board. Fred Eckerness was a career member of our Sheriff's Department who served 2 terms as the Sheriff of Kenosha County. Later in his retirement, he rejoined county government, serving 10 years on the county board. Fred was truly a dedicated public servant, known and respected for his direct talk and action. Let's take a moment of silence for Supervisor Fred Eckerness. Thank you. As I stand here before you tonight, I can't help but reflect on the great work we've done over the last 14 years. And everything we've been able to do for the people of our great county to move Kenosha County forward. I came into this office in June of 2008, in what I believe we all remember to be a challenging time, to say the least, for our county and our nation. Kenosha County government was in a state of flux, with the previous county executive having left office suddenly. There was an acute need for us all to pull together. And of course, in Kenosha County and beyond, the Great Recession was here. In the summer of 2008, it would still be some months before Washington would bail out the big banks and the auto industry, and we'd see 2 of the big 3 automakers go bankrupt. But we were already feeling the pain locally. Foreclosures were rising. It was clear times were going to be tough for a while. Here in county government, there was a lot of work to do. Let's talk a little bit about some of those issues we faced. There was untouched, long-deferred maintenance that needed to be done in our county buildings. If you were standing on the roof of the courthouse, you could push the parapet off the wall onto the sidewalk. The roof in my office had a leak that had been patched with a tarp and a bucket of tar. It needed garbage cans when a significant rain fell. The foundation of this building was leaking. We had air conditioning and heating systems that were operating with hoses connected to faucets. We had a space crisis in our public safety building. where 911 dispatchers were working in loud, cramped, outdated quarters. And our police and sheriff's department operations were bursting at the seams. Petrifying Springs Park, the jewel of our county parks, is crumbling and underutilized. We had an abandoned gravel pit that was intended to be a park out west with a lock on the gate and a sign that read "No trespassing." Brookside Care Center was losing money, more than $1 million in some years. There were silos in our finances. The finance team downtown wasn't always able to be on top of what was going on in human services and public works. Working with Joe Clark, the chairman at that time, we were able to address that with some dispatch. In IT, we had antiquated systems and closets full of undeployed equipment that had sat there so long it was already obsolete. And now look where we are today. We've addressed all of these issues and made so many more improvements that'll serve the people of Kenosha County, in many cases, for generations and generations to come. Together, we, along with the previous county boards, moved the needle. Heck, we broke the needle in terms of measurement of how many areas we could, and in fact should, done those repairs that will stand the test of time. The courthouse and this building have undergone restorations needed to ensure their future for generations. We expanded our public safety building to bring 911 dispatch out of their cramped quarters, providing the space and quiet environment needed to ensure that when someone called on an emergency call, the call would be answered by a dispatcher and be able to listen and send the needed help. We planned for the future, creating space in the safety building for IT. The state-of-the-art Emergency Operations Center and the Sheriff's Detective Bureau. And we also purchased, with some urging, Supervisor Rose, relatively inexpensive properties around the Civic Center campus as they became available, giving the county seat more places to grow in the future where it belongs, downtown Kenosha. We gave new life to Petrifying Springs Park and all of our parks. We got people back into the parks, wore out the grass, which I think many of you always know was my passion, bringing people back to our parks and improving the facilities. And that begot disc golf and pickleball at Fox River Park, great disc golf course also at Silver Lake Park, bike trails, walking trails throughout the county, yoga and fitness in the park classes, Oktoberfest at Old Settlers Park and at Kemper Center, the Petrifying Springs Beer Garden, and Boundless Adventures at the Bristol Woods Park. We took that locked-up gravel pit on Highway KD and eventually transformed it into Kenosha County Veterans Memorial Park. What a success story. It's now beautiful, with more enhancements are sure to come. Thank you for your support of honoring those who have served, those who are serving, and those who will serve as they protect and defend us every day. Brookside is no longer losing money. In fact, it's returning dollars to the levy year after year. It's been modernized for the future with the expansion of the addition of Willowbrook assisted living. I think we would all agree that these facilities are one of the greatest county's assets, providing high quality, compassionate, continuum of care to our residents. And Newsweek magazine agrees. You may have heard it ranked Brookside as Wisconsin's top-rated nursing home in the state of Wisconsin in 2021. In IT, we brought in experts and did total revamping. And now we have had the savings because of those investments were made. Greater productivity, easier access to services for our residents, and quick pivots to remote work for many of our employees in recent times of crisis. These are all things made possible by our skilled team in IT. The silos in our finance department and finances across the county have been torn down. And today we are now a AAA county. Let's give a hand to our finance team and all of you for supporting the measures it took to get to be AAA. AAA was another one of those goals that we all had for a long time. And now we're there, just one of 7 counties out of the 72 in Wisconsin. The rating has already paid off by giving us dividends of $300,000 in borrowing costs last year. How did we get to AAA? There's just a few highlights of what we've accomplished in the finances of Kenosha County. Our general fund balance is currently at its highest level in history, up 143% since 2008, ensuring liquidity to provide for county obligations. The equalized value of our county is also the highest it's been, up over 64% over the last 8 years. Our general purpose levy has increased an average of 2.4% since 2008, materially below the rate of inflation. Since 2008, the county's general fund has reduced its dependency of funding by the tax levy from 73% then to currently at 68%. And our mill rate was reduced for 8 consecutive years. It's now equal to the rate of 10 years ago. In the last 4 years, the county taxes per $100,000 of value on a home have decreased $4.25. For new construction, Kenosha County ranked 3rd highest in the state of Wisconsin. And even with all of those big generational projects that we talked about earlier, our long-term obligations are still $25 million lower compared to 2008. Over the years, we've made strategic, significant investments in our infrastructure, and those investments have certainly paid off. You've heard me say infrastructure leads to economic development, which leads to jobs. And it's true. Kenosha's job growth from 2015 to 2020 was 11.1%, the highest in the state of Wisconsin. What did we do to improve our infrastructure? Started back in 2008. We worked with the city of Kenosha when Gordon Foods wanted to move to Kenosha. We rebuilt 38th Street, what was County Trunk N. Gordon Food moved in. That was our first big economic development win in those challenging economic times. Little did we know that Amazon would soon bring 1.5 million square feet just to the north, and then all the development of U-Line to the west. We expanded 30th Avenue from St. Peter's to 15th Street, 4 lanes, and then turned it over to the city. We expanded Highway K, 60th Street, 4 lanes out to Indian Trail School. And there's more work to come on that this year, expanding it to 94th Court, with 2 more phases to reach 128th Avenue as the end game. We reconfigured Highway F in Randall and Twin Lakes and straightened out some dangerous curves and improving intersection sightlines. And with help from the state of Wisconsin, we reconstructed and expanded a portion of Highway H with turn lanes to make way for a new Kroger fulfillment center in Pleasant Prairie. We completed the largest county trunk highway project in our history, Highway S, from Highway 31 to the interstate, thanks to the support of the federal and state governments and this board's support. That's a beautiful, safe, 4-lane divided gateway to Kenosha through the village of Summers, the northwest city of Kenosha. and there's a multi-use trail that'll take you all the way out to Mars Cheese Castle if you need a snack. Along the way, while we've been doing these projects, we haven't lost track of maintaining our other county roads. Since 2008, we repaved nearly 80% of our 253 miles of roads at least once. Think about that. 80% of our county roads have received a new surface of pavement in just the last 14 years. When you hear people complain about potholes, they're usually not talking about county roads. When it comes to economic development, infrastructure isn't only about roads and bridges. It's also about providing the incentives we need to compete with other communities. And we've done that. We've done that through the county's support of the High Impact Fund, working closely with CABA, the Kenosha Area Business Alliance, which has generated more than 1,500 jobs and nearly $300 million in new private investment. As the recession played itself out in Kenosha County, we began to rack up more and more economic development wins, not only to our prime location, but to our forward-thinking actions and investments in county government and by this board. 2010, the last vestige of automaking left us with Chrysler's bankruptcy, which led to the closing of the Kenosha engine plant. But at the same time, Uline was arriving with its significant corporate headquarters in Pleasant Prairie. And we've only seen that company continue to grow its footprint in Kenosha County, which is now our largest private sector employer. Many other significant economic developments followed. And I can't help to feel that Kenosha County, things are going to be very, very bright in the future. I must say that while it's my privilege to serve as your county executive during this time of great change and the rebirth of this community, this was far from a one-man show. This took a willing partnership of county boards during that period of time, people were willing to take a risk on some development and infrastructure, which paid off dividends. Ideas that came from board members. Ideas I might have had that were refined and made better by board members. We were truly all in this together. And some of those great ideas have come to fruition in a major way. Looking ahead, we have some big projects ahead of us on this county board that they've supported. And I hope the future board and the future administration continues to support. The relocation of our human service functions from the 8600 Sheridan Road Job Center to the new centrally located facility on 34th Avenue and 52nd Street. It's something that received unanimous support from this board last November, and that is really terrific. It's clearly the right thing to do. Staying on top of our road paving as we have the last 14 years. It's my hope that the new board administration will continue this progressive pavement program. Using broadband access to areas that remain underserved, to bring that access to them. Going to work and school from home during the pandemic underscored the importance of this. And the county has a role to play in ensuring that providers have the incentive to reach those low-density population areas. Protecting our eroding lakefront at Kemper Center, trying to get those federal funds so that we can make the necessary improvements there to preserve that historic property for future generations. And restoring our historic ceremonial courtroom to its former grandeur, making it a gathering place for reflective and education about the law, so that young people can understand the importance of preserving our history. There's an interested group that's actively working to raise funds for this, private funds for this, to make it happen and make the project a reality. I urge the county board to support these efforts, and I know many of you are. Completing the first phase of the South Branch River restoration and moving ahead with the other phases. Seeing the largest initiative for ecological restoration in Kenosha's history, and one that will improve our quality of life for generations to come. And at the same time, completing phase 3 of the Pike River restoration in Petrifying Springs Park. another project that's already improved the quality of life in our environment. And the grants for both of those projects are quite significant. Supporting the mission of the Racial and Ethnic Equity Commission. As you all know, Kenosha County over the last 2 years has been putting increased emphasis on the pursuit of racial equity. This board supported the creation of the Racial and Ethnic Equity Commission and a resolution declaring racism as a public health crisis in Kenosha County. Jenny Tunkeys, my chief of staff, has recently said that our ongoing work in this area is among the things she's the proudest of accomplishing in our 14 years in office. And Jenny herself, as the first woman to hold her position, breaking gender barriers throughout her career, is a true ally in the advancement of racial and gender equity in Kenosha County government. And so it is my pleasure tonight to announce the establishment of an award in her honor, the Jenny Tunkeys Award, to be presented annually going forward to a person who has made a significant impact on equity, diversity, and inclusion in Kenosha County government. And I'm pleased to announce that the inaugural recipient of this award will be Adeline Green, who has done so much to advance equity in our county and our community for so many years. Along with Jenny and Adeline, I look forward to this award becoming an annual tradition. And there's more still on your plate, like continuing the momentum of enhancing Kenosha County Veterans Memorial Park, making sure that we work toward building out the amenities that our Veterans Work Group has recommended. The reconstruction of County Trunk EM in Twin Lakes, which will address serious public safety situation that is there currently. And retaining a AAA bond rating that Kenosha County has worked so hard to earn. We've done so many great things together over the last 14 years, as listed on the sheet on your desk. It's my hope that you'll continue to pull together and work for the good of our county, setting aside partisan politics, working in our best interests of the most people for the long haul. I'm happy to announce tonight that our transition with the new county executive started today, and I can tell you, County Executive-elect Samantha Kirkman is off to a terrific start. Welcome, County Executive-elect Samantha Kirkman. Thank you for being here tonight. See you tomorrow, the next day, the next day. A lot of transition. You can let political polarization get in the way of getting things done, or you can work together like we've been able to do together to continue advancing innovation and best practices in county government, delivering the services people need in the most efficient ways possible, to maintain and further our position as the hotspot. We're the hotspot of economic development in Wisconsin, the Midwest, and the United States. To make Kenosha County an even better place to live, work, play, and raise your family. And as someone who loves this county, someone who cares deeply about it and always will, it is my sincere hope that you choose to continue to move Kenosha County forward. Thank you all for all the work you've done. Thank you for working with me as your county executive. May God bless America. May God bless Kenosha County. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Terry.
Citizens' comments are next. Any citizen wishing to speak, everyone wishing to speak will have one opportunity for 5 minutes. Provide your name, address for the record before making comments. Please refrain from using vulgar or profane language, and avoid attacks, threats, or comments directed at any individuals, please. Anybody who want to speak, step up to the podium. See no citizens' comments. Citizens' comments are closed. I have one announcement. Youth and Governance. Brooke Smith is over to my right here. She's on the PDAC committee, and she's with us tonight to learn a little bit more about county government in action. Thank you for coming tonight. Supervisor reports. Supervisor Grady.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It has been quite a week with the election and all, so I will attempt to be brief, even though we do have quite a few things on our agenda to go over this evening. You'll hear my voice more than once as we go through public works items that are on the docket for this evening, so I'll just dwell upon the bare basics of our last meetings that we had at the Public Works Committee meeting. We held it out at Brightondale, which is nice. We wanted to be able to see the golf operation out there and some of the improvements they've made in the clubhouse. And the place is really spruced up. It looks pretty nice out there. They've done a good job, and we're just waiting for this weather to break so we can get some golfers out there and generate some revenue. But I think we're poised to do a good job. The takeaway message from our last committee meeting was if you're in the process of public works, bidding and construction, it's not a very good climate if you're trying to make sure that our tax dollars are spent wisely. And what I mean by that is I have at least 4 examples of where items came back significantly over budget. So for example, this building right here. We're on phase 4 of the heat pump replacement, and we're the better part of $200,000 over budget. So we're not going to do it. We're just going to say, put a hold on it, scale it back, do whatever we can to take a second look at it, but it's kind of surprising the climate that we're in, both from the labor component and the hardware component that we're seeing. Another thing, Brookside roof replacement. It's not a big structural issue, but there's some gabled areas that have shingles on them, $67,000 over budget. You know what? We're not going to do it this year. We'll do it next year. We'll take a look at it. It's on the back burner. It's not really going to hurt us in terms of water infiltration, but it's just, you know, it's like one thing after another. The detention center lobby security enhancements, $50,000 over budget. Working with the contractor, working with the bid specifications, sharpening our pencil, so to speak, to say, okay, we'd like to do this, but we're not going to do it when the prices are coming in this high. And then finally, Kenosha Veterans Park, we're trying to do some improvements there, which are restroom areas, memorial shelter, and entrance signage. Again, $200,000 over expectation. So again, working with the architects, working with the bid specs and so forth to see if we can get a more friendly climate this year, next year, whatever it takes. But just wanted you to know we're keeping the eye on the budget and doing the best we can. And more about that as time goes on. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Gaschke.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one brief update from the Planning and Development and Extension Education Committee, specifically about the Youth and Governance Program. As you mentioned, Youth and Governance participant Brooke Smith is here tonight, and we're excited about the new cohort of youths coming on over the next month. Just to give the board a brief update, there were 157 youth nominated over the past couple of months from 11 different area high schools. And last week we spent 5 hours over 2 different nights interviewing 27 candidates, and we'll narrow those down to 14 open positions, 2 youth per each of our 7 standing committees. And so once our committee hears and approves those recommendations, they'll be coming before the chair, and then those new youth will be joining on in May. So just a quick update about youth and governance. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other supervisor reports. We'll go into old business.
Old business ordinance, second reading, 2 required. Ordinance 23 from Human Services Committee, an ordinance to amend Chapter 16 of the Municipal Code of Kenosha County to reflect changes in State Administrative Code, ACT-SP 75, and to provide clear publication of fees in programs regulated by said ordinance. Passed unanimously at committee. Supervisor Berg excused.
Supervisor Belsky. Hold on a second.
I move ordinance 23.
I'll second that. On the motion.
With regard to ordinance 23, the ordinance is to amend ordinance 16 to align with Wisconsin administrative codes to change the term restaurant to retail food establishment. Also removing the fees from the ordinance so they can be posted separately when they should have a revision versus having to update the ordinance going forward. And then this new ordinance, along with the fee structure, will be revised and put on the environmental health page. So there's no fee changes at this time. It's merely to align with the Wisconsin administrative code. Ask for your vote on this.
Thank you. Any discussion? Now we'll take a voice vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? Motion carried. Thank you.
Ordinance 24 from the Public Works and Facilities Committee, an ordinance to revise Chapter 10 of the Municipal Code of Kenosha County Parks. Passed unanimously at committee. Supervisors Rodriguez and Nudo excused.
Supervisor Grady.
Move ordinance number 24.
Moved by Supervisor Grady, second by Supervisor Franco. Supervisor Grady.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We had a rather lengthy document, some of which was outdated. You know, we didn't have anything in there about e-bikes or about drones, things that are currently part of our structure and landscape these days. So the committee took a look at the revision of this particular document. We actually tabled it for a month, came back and revisited it again, had further comments by both the committee and by administration, and we did revise it, and we'd ask your approval this evening.
Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll take a voice vote. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any nays? Thank you.
Ordinance 25 from the Public Works and Facilities Committee, an ordinance to create Chapter 23 of the Municipal Code of Kenosha County pertaining to county trunk highway access management. Passed unanimously at committee. Supervisors Nudo and Rodriguez excused.
Supervisor Grady.
Move ordinance number 25.
Moved by Supervisor Grady, second by Supervisor Belsky. Supervisor Grady on the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This has been in works for at least a year or so, and it really is a proactive approach to making our traffic smooth, flow more smoothly, and have less potential for accidents. And the idea is, on the front side, to actually, with the consent of the municipalities involved, to have a master plan as to the access to the roads, so that when developers come in, they know what to expect. And that way, the permitting process is alleviated to a certain extent of the municipalities. The developers will pay their fair share to have these access roads put in, and it'll be done in a manner in which it's appropriate from a planning standpoint. Oftentimes, the planner that we worked with said, we usually get this type of situation coming to us after the roads have already been built, there's issues, there are accidents, and we have to try to undo it, and we have to try to remediate it. We've not really been in the situation before where we can plan ahead. This is wonderful. Why aren't more municipalities doing it? Well, I don't have an answer to that. I'm just happy that here in Kenosha County, we have some semblance of a proactive approach that going forward we can address these development potentials on the front side. So we have administration here for further question and comments, but I would ask your approval on this document this evening.
Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, voice vote. All those in favor, aye. Supervisor Decker, you had a question?
Thank you,
right.
Mr. Chairman. I just wanted, I guess, I see that there are ways that you can get approvals and things like that. I just want to ensure that the approval process is people or developers or whomever is going to be able to get granted changes or approvals on these things. I just see when people out in the county especially try to get changes to state highways, especially like Highway 50 or 142 especially, it's pretty much impossible to get access on state highways. I just want to be in, make sure that this isn't a way, or it's not going to be where it's basically impossible to get access on highway or county highway roads. Can someone answer?
Supervisor Grady, can you answer that, or somebody else?
I don't think I have the wherewithal to be able to answer it, but I understand that there is an appeal process and there are different things that can be done. I'd ask our Director of Public Works to come forward and comment if you would, please.
Thank
Hey.
you.
Yes, yeah, because of the potential for those types of situations, there is an appeal process built into the ordinance specifically to address that, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
An appeal process that can actually be obtained?
Yes, I'm not going to throw too big a rock at the DOT, but I'm familiar with what you're referencing. And yes, it's designed so that if there is something that's reasonable, the goal of this is to really, as Supervisor Grady said, is preserve the safety. Like S is a great example. We've invested a ton of money in this infrastructure. We want to make sure that, one, it maintains a safe situation by not kind of willy-nilly granting access, which is what happens oftentimes. And the second thing, we want to preserve the efficiencies it gets from a traffic flow standpoint. So this is designed to ensure both those goals are met all the time. And if we overstep something, there is an appeal process to the Public Works Committee to review it and see if there's something that needs to be done to make it more reasonable, so.
Okay, thank you very much.
Supervisor Berg?
Yeah, to kind of feed off of what was being said, something that I've compared it to is the little frontage road that's in front of the airport. Instead of each one of those organizations having their own access to, 52nd Street, there's that one light, there's that little frontage road there that everybody can access, and they're able to access then that one light versus each one having access.
Thank you. Any other discussion? We'll do a voice vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? Motion carried. Thank you.
New business, resolution, one reading. Resolution 121 from the Finance and Administration Committee, 2021 to 2022 carryover and annual closeout resolution. Passed unanimously at committee.
Supervisor Gens.
Mr. Chairman, I move Resolution 121.
Moved by Supervisor Gens, second by Supervisor Ron Frederick. Supervisor Gens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is an item that comes before the board, and we consider it every year. In closing 2021, there are items that have been identified that need to be carried over, and some of the examples are projects that were not completed by the end of the year but are still going to happen, repurposing of funds to complete other projects, repurposing of funds to cover unexpected expenses that have been identified. The resolution identifies the following: $450,000 to offset a material increase in the ACE program and juvenile detention rates in 2022. The ACE program is Alternatives to Corrections, and that stems from Racine increasing the cost per day up from $300 to $400 after our budget was done. So that's that issue. And then $650,000 to offset Brookside's reduced revenues during COVID when we couldn't take on new clients. And the use of $1.75 million of ARPA funds to offset lost revenues, as was identified in the Kenosha County ARPA plan. A list of these items is shown on page 7. If you have any questions, staff is here to answer them. So, committee did approve it unanimously as was stated, and we ask for your support.
Any discussion? Supervisor Rose?
Yes, if the staff could elaborate on the use of $650,000 from the general funds to offset losses there at Brookside, I think that needs to be discussed a bit. Rarely do we go to the general fund to pay for anything, and I think it's clear that it has to be an extraordinary circumstance. I'm not arguing against it at this point, but I'd like to have more discussion on that point than merely say we withdraw it from the general fund. One of the reasons why we
Go ahead.
are AAA is because we have been extremely reluctant and have standards that are required to be met before we go to that general fund. I want to know that those standards have been met.
Danny?
In reviewing Brookside's status at the end of the year, as we all know, census has been down, COVID restrictions did not allow operations to continue as we would have hoped. We had set aside $1.75 million in the ARPA plan, and when we saw that that was not sufficient to cover the deficit, we had a choice between drawing on additional ARPA funds to the extent of $650,000 to make them whole, or utilize general fund reserves. Even after this $650,000, the unassigned general fund will be at 32.77%. And we felt that that was a sufficient level to be stable enough to utilize those funds in this instance. It is a one-time use. It's not a recurring use. And so that's why we proposed it the way we did.
So, question. We set up a number of standards a number of years ago at the recommendation of David Gersten, then Finance Director, when you can use funds for one-time use. Does this meet that standard?
Yes, it does.
And what standard are you talking about then?
I do not have the resolution in front of me. It is, the reserve policy is what you're referring to. That's where these things are identified. And that is an allowable use within the reserve policy.
Okay, but what standard are we to hang our hat on? You said it met the standards. What standard is the question?
It meets the parameters of the reserve policy.
I know, you've said that 3 times. Question, what standard? There are a whole bunch of standards set forth there.
Again, I don't have the document in front of me to
All right.
identify exactly what the language is that allows it. Do you?
It's a non-reoccurring expense.
Speaking to the mic, what was it?
It's a non-reoccurring expense. One-time use.
And that's all that is required?
Correct.
All right. Kim?
That's it?
Yes.
Thank you. Any other discussion? This requires a 2/3 vote. We'll do a roll call. Get ready for it. Say it. Technology.
It's not letting the keypads follow through. I'm going to do a roll call, and Michelle will mark your vote. Supervisor Grady? Supervisor Rose? Gantz?
Aye.
Belsky? Pierce? Kubicki? Gashke? Rodriguez? O'Day?
Aye.
Berg? Ron Frederick? Nudo? Franco? Boyd Frederick? Gully? Wambold? Uhas? Palmaville? Nordigan? Decker? Lewis? Resolution passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Resolution 122 from the Public Works and Finance and Administration Committees, a resolution to authorize the purchase at 3222 Washington Road, Kenosha, Wisconsin. Passed unanimously at both committees. Supervisor Nudo and Pierce excused. Supervisor Rodriguez absent.
Supervisor Grady.
Move resolution number 122.
Moved by Supervisor Grady, second by Supervisor Gens. Supervisor Grady on the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It was brought to our attention that the one remaining property to the east of Brookside Care Center, it's a house, has come up for sale. It wasn't expected to be maybe quite this soon, but the owners made their intentions. They would like to sell it, and they wanted to have a few little contingencies in there, which are completely agreeable. After vetting through Corporation Counsel and our committee, there was quite some discussion this past Monday night, including the purchase price, which is listed at $249,900. And after doing some calculation and so forth, just on our committee with some of the members, we felt that that was, in view of the current real estate prices, certainly within the realm of expectation. It'll be a good addition because, as you know, we are a growing area. Our footprint seems to need expansion from time to time, and it's a good item we feel to take opportunity and advantage of. So we ask your approval this evening. We do have staff and qualified individuals to answer questions if there are any. Thank you.
Any discussion? Supervisor Nudo.
Thank you. I believe this might be a good deal to buy, so I'm not really against the proposal of purchasing this property. However, for reasons stated over at the Finance Committee, and actually a few more, I don't feel comfortable in the way the process has been done. A few years ago, when we did purchase the property next door to that, I had the same concerns. I was assured that everything would be taken care of if we were going to purchase another property. Well, guess what? The same thing happens now. One of the other questions that I have is we're paying $260,000 for the property, which I'm not questioning the price. It might be a good price. However, the money is coming from reserve. Which reserve are they coming from? And another thing that we're not addressing in there is once we purchase the property, we're going to have a lot more cost to tear down the property, make a parking lot, or whatever we're going to do. So where are we going to get the money? I think we should look at that. There is plenty of time. The contract is signed, so really nobody can back out of it. Closing is January 15th. It's subject to approval of the county board. So basically, if we don't want it, we can back out, but the sellers can't. We have plenty of time, so I would like to postpone this year to make to take a vote on it until after we can get all those questions answered. How much is that gonna cost overall, and where are we gonna get the money from? So I will like to make a motion to defer this for another 60 days or so.
Repeat your motion.
The motion will be to defer this for 60 days.
Discussion on the motion? Supervisor Rose?
Mr.
Chairman, I have a question here. So, just on the rules, Corporation Council perhaps can answer. There's a swearing in of a new board. Do resolutions then die that have been presented to this board? If 60 days, of course, is beyond this board's jurisdiction, does this resolution, any others not passed, end?
Yes, as a practical matter, tabling this would end it as far as certainly this board is concerned. It could theoretically be brought back. It would have to start back at the committee process again in order to go forward. So it would really be, I'm not saying it's ending it because it could be. Revived with the
Yes.
next board, but it really, saying that we're going to postpone it for 60 days is, you could say we're going to postpone it for 15, it would have the same impact. It's going to be dead as far as this board is concerned. It would have to start over.
Okay. That's it, Supervisor Earl?
Well, you do it today or not at all, but 60 days is,
Okay,
we're just kidding ourselves.
thank you. Supervisor Nordigan, did you want on this motion?
Not on the motion, my question would.
All right. Supervisor Gens?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will not be supporting a deferral. I think that the facts were presented. I think that we should get this locked up, and it's not going to happen for quite some time, so it's not, we would have to figure out where the money would come from then. I'm not concerned about that. I think getting the property is the first step, and I think this board's approval is needed to do that, so I won't be deferring this. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Berg?
Question's already been answered.
What'd you say?
My question was already answered.
Supervisor Kubicki?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I, too, will not be supporting this motion. I believe the $260,000 for this piece of property on .89 acres, 1,649 square feet, at $260,000, I think is a good acquisition. It's around our Brookside campus. There's one thing, ladies and gentlemen, they don't make anymore, and that's land. So let's acquire it now. Let's get it over with. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing none, this requires a 2/3 vote also? Oh, this, just that, the referral? Okay, all right, okay, we'll vote on that first, okay. We should do a roll call on that, too. Is it set up now? This is on referring it back for 60 days. Yes.
That's what we're
I
doing.
did.
We've got the system working
It's
again.
working now.
Supervisor Boyd Frederick, what would your vote be? No. And Gantz is supposed to be no. And Boyd Frederick is no. Motion fails, 2 yes, 19 no.
Supervisor Nordigan on the main motion?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Did I hear this right? This is the last piece of property? There's not going to be another one in another 5 years, 10 years, anything comes up?
There's only one property in between Brookside and what used to be called Washington Manor, I think it's Washington Care, whatever it is.
Okay.
So this is the last remaining piece of property.
Okay. And then a second question, pages 6 and 7, there's other resolutions and other information that's completely not related to this at all. Looks like, I could be wrong, but I don't see anything on there that talks about it. Do we know what that is? It's after the expense and revenue page. There's 2 more pages. It's got golf in it, it's got it's got Kemper Center in it, it's got Veterans Park in it.
I don't have that page here with the resolution.
Okay. It's on the electronic, yeah. And then you have a CIP 23 in there too, which is the courthouse south entrance ramp and a civic center. So just to be clear, none of that is anything to do with this resolution.
That was probably some sort of clerical error.
Okay.
That would have been, through I'm not sure who uploaded it, but I'm guessing that's a clerical error. It wasn't me.
Okay. All right, well, as long as it's not including that.
I don't have it in the original
I didn't
resolution.
think so, but I just wanted to make sure nothing got
Okay.
tagged along.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, this requires a 2/3 vote on the machine. Is it ready?
Yes. Resolution passes 18-3. Resolution 123 from the Public Works and Finance Administration Committees, a resolution for authorization to apply for Transportation Alternatives Program, TAP, grant for the design and construction of an extension of the County Trunk Highway C multi-use trail from 128th Avenue to County Trunk Highway U. Passed unanimously at both committees. Supervisor Nudo, Pierce, Palmaville, Wamble excused. Supervisor Rodriguez absent.
Supervisor Grady.
Move resolution number 123.
Moved by Supervisor Grady, second by Supervisor Gens. Supervisor Grady.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a happy one. This is a multi-use trail. We're attempting to have state and federal funds return home and be used for the construction of this. If you can picture the west side of the interstate by County Trunk Highway C, 128th is just a little bit west. It's kind of like the new frontage road there, if you want to consider that. So along the south aspect of County Highway C, from 128th to U, we would envision a multi-use path or trail to be constructed. And usually the county winds up paying a fraction of the fees involved with that. And it really does add to safety. You know, you talk about bicyclists, pedestrians, and an increasingly trafficked area. You get them out of the road path, and it's a happy thing. So we ask your approval this evening.
Thank you. Any discussion? Supervisor Nordigan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To Chairman Grady, you know, there's really not much between the interstate and you. I mean, it's all wide open business stuff. Why we want to put a bike trail there? Are we trying to get to MB and then up to Boundless Adventures? Is that the goal?
I do know that there is an attempt to integrate the bike trail network. So I think this would be one link of it. And yes, I think that would be the ultimate goal.
Then what about further west where we have ridiculous amounts of open land that we don't have ownership of? Is that the next goal? Because when this came up a couple years ago, it's clearly that Highway C, any county highway west of the I, is not an ideal place to be riding a bike. I mean, even EM in Twin Lakes isn't, and it's rural. So is this going to be the alternative then? Is this the plan to move forward and just do all these hard bike paths all the way out to Twin Lakes?
That I don't know. I would have to actually look at the bike plan map and comment upon that. So I can only comment upon this particular one at the moment.
Well, but if this is the bike path to nowhere, then why would we want to do it? I mean, there has to be a plan that says we're going to connect all this. And I think Ray's itching to say something back there.
Well, let's put him on the stand.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Arbit, please come to the microphone.
So yes, as Supervisor Grady's indicating, it is a link because there is a plan, the master plan, 2025 comprehensive plan that was adopted in 2013, does have an off-road path that goes along Highway C to the west. It doesn't actually go to nowhere, because by going to U, there's actually on U, that entire section of U is gonna have, by the private development that's taking place there right now, there's off-road bike paths. So we'll connect to that, and a minimum right now, it'll at least make that loop, because it'll connect up with what's on Q. So at this point, it doesn't end, it literally abruptly, which is what is there now. It ends at 128th, and boom, then you gotta jump on the road. So this is just one more link in that chain, kind of as we continue to move west.
Well, I do know in the area where the overpass and all that went in Pleasant Prairie, that population there is very happy with it, but you have no population out there. It's not like moms and strollers and kids and bikes and all that are gonna be doing it. Is there, I know there's a plan, but does this plan need to be revisited based on what's happening? We've got a new potential bike park with off-road bike paths coming in, and here, you know, we're looking at this, and again, maybe this is not the right place for it, but so you said this is gonna hook up to Q.
Right, it'll make a loop, but that's an interim goal. So, like you're referencing the bike path that's further out on the west.
Right.
So, the way this whole thing is developing, there's a master plan that shows how all the arteries connect to one another, but they're not necessarily going in a linear way, like all coming from the east moving west. So there's some that are coming from the south going north, or some, but overall, there's a strategy to connect everything up. It's just that they're not moving all at the same pace.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Supervisor Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ray, I'm going to call you back up here. Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
I just have some questions for you, Ray. Am I reading this correct, that this is a proposed half-mile trail that's going to cost nearly $1 million to pave?
So what this is the authorization to apply for the grant. So when we have the engineering folks put together estimates for these things, they always do it in a way that we have a best case, most likely case, and worst case scenario. In the past, we've typically used the most likely case, but because of what's going on in the marketplace, we've gone to the worst case scenario. And the reason we do that is because by the time these things are approved and by the time construction actually starts, there's usually a 2 to 3 year lag. And the funds that you get via the grant are locked in based on when you make the application. So we felt, based on the engineering estimates, we're going to use that worst case. It's very reasonable. Plug that in so that by the time, if we actually are fortunate enough to get the cash, it's going to be closer to what the actual cost would be to construct it. So it could potentially cost that much, but right now that's considered a worst case scenario.
And how wide would this trail be? 5 feet? 4
I
feet?
believe it's a 10-foot path. Yep.
And what do you think, on average, and if you can answer this or if somebody else can answer this, what does it cost us to pave a half-mile of road or resurface? We do a lot of resurfacing. What does that cost us on average? Half
So
mile.
right now, if we look at a 2-lane road, I believe those costs are now up to about $350. No, they're like more than $500,000 right now, aren't they? For it's just a straight up paving that's not creating a base, so it's just resurfacing. Whereas in this case, you grade, create a base, all that's engineered, and then you put the road on top, the path on top of it.
Alrighty, I think this is ridiculous. I mean, we could pave, by what you're saying, a mile of road that many people use anywhere in the county, or we could build a half-mile trail that connects nowhere on either end for $1 million. I don't know how you sell that to anybody.
So
I mean, I just think to myself, if I went for just in my district, Lincoln Park's in my district, once around the Lincoln Park Lagoon is roughly a half mile. If I went to my residents and asked them, we can repave the trail around the lagoon, or we can do a mile of roads in front of each of your house, you know, a mile of roads in front of houses in your district. I don't think that would be a hard sell at all for the houses. I just do not understand. There's been a lot of things my 4 years on the county board I have not quite comprehended why we pursue, but $1 million bike path that's a half mile long that goes nowhere? And I think that's probably the hardest thing I've seen in 4 years to sell to my constituents. So I'll be voting no. I think any reasonable supervisor should be voting no, unless you are going to go back to your district and tell your constituents that you're spending $1 million on a bike trail to nowhere. And we've heard that term used in the past, bike trail to nowhere. Most of those bike trails to nowhere, they connect to existing bike trail, and then they just kind of end abruptly. And then there's part of the master plan where eventually down the road, it will connect to something. This is, I mean, the epitome of a bike trail to nowhere, because you probably have to take your car there, get out of the car, hop on your bike, ride to the half-mile end, then ride back, so you got a mile in on your bike, then get back in your car and go back to wherever you came from. I'm not going to vote. I think this is ludicrous. I think it's crazy. That's all.
If you want me to
President Brady,
respond, I'll respond
do
to
you
some
wanna
of
answer
the
something?
inaccuracies, but.
No, I just want to make a comment, and then if Mr. Arbit wants to follow up, he can, but the point of the matter is, we're not constructing anything. It's, comments like that are off topic. We're applying for a grant. You apply for a grant, you get the money or you don't. Then it has to come back to the county board, to the committee to actually do construction. So all this talk about a trail to nowhere, $1 million, it's off topic. We're applying for a grant. Are you in favor of trying to get money outside of Kenosha County for a project? Vote for it. If you're not, don't. Thank you.
Supervisor Decker.
Thank you. Supervisor Rodriguez took most of my comments. $1 million for a half-a-mile bike trail. I've been told that we can pave a mile road that it's $1 million a mile to pave a road. This is twice as much for a bike path. Supervisor Norgan said people on the other side of the expressway where that path is enjoy it. I had people actually knocking on doors in that neighborhood, and they do not like it. It is unsafe for them to back out of their driveways, and they do not like it because of the safety issue. I don't think that was really taken into consideration when that bike path was built. I remember in 2013, the bike plan being put forth, and me questioning how much the bike plan was going to cost. They had no answer, and this is why, because they did not want to tell us that they were going to be paying $1 million a half a mile for bike paths. So I am definitely voting against this because it's just ridiculous, and I do not care if there's people say that we're just asking to write for a grant for it, permission to do that. Because every time we do that, then they come back and say, hey, we got this grant. You guys approved us applying for this grant, so now you pretty much have to accept the grant. That's always the implication when we get this. So I am voting against this.
Any other discussion? Supervisor Berg.
The money that's coming from this is from the TAP grant, which is called Transportation Alternatives Program. It's not paving a road in front of your house. This money is meant for projects like this. Is this correct, Mr. Arbit?
Yeah, that's no.
A question I have for you, Director Arbit, is in terms of the businesses that are coming to Kenosha, where we have bike paths or multi-use trails around them, is that aesthetically pleasing? Is that something that they're able to present or attract people to come to their businesses?
Yeah, most of the commercial development that takes place now, we don't even ask them to do the multi-use path. They incorporate it in their original plans because they know it's so key from a recruitment and retention standpoint for their employees. So we don't even have to, we didn't have to ask the folks on all the commercial development. It's part of what they proposed to us.
So
it's standard procedure.
So we can assume that this is a small variable in businesses coming here.
It's another link in that process. Yep.
Absolutely. Wonderful. And again, back to the whole paving a mile in front of our house. This money can't even pay for that. This is a specific grant funding that goes to Transportation Alternatives Program, not road, not two-lane roads. Thank you.
Supervisor Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, what I'm trying to highlight here is to any normal Kenosha County citizen, whether their tax dollars are coming from the Kenosha County tax levy or from the state or from the feds, they don't care who it went to. All they care about is it's their tax dollars. They paid tax on it, went to somebody, so it's coming back to Kenosha County. And again, we're going to sell to them $1 million half-mile trail to nowhere. Now, I'm not a civil engineer, and I don't write grants, and I've never applied for one myself. But just based on what I see here in this here, sounds like something that the city of Kenosha could use for their lakefront. It's a walking path there. I'd rather see city of Kenosha take $1 million and redo the lakefront there where it's crumbling and falling into the lake. That's not safe. My constituents use it. I think all of our constituents at some point in their life have used the lakefront here in Kenosha, downtown. So it's not that this is imaginary state money that's not real money, because that's how we look at a lot of these things. It's not our money, it's the state's money. It's somebody's going to get it. I'd rather somebody else get it and use it for something that's not as ridiculous as $1 million bike trail. And regardless, say it only costs us $187,000. I don't think my constituents or any normal, sane Kenosha County resident would even think that $200,000 for a half-mile trail that doesn't connect on either end anywhere is ridiculous. So again, if this means if we don't get it and some other community does, like maybe the city of Kenosha or Pleasant Prairie has some development going on there, and their village center or whatever it is they're calling it, their view for a downtown Pleasant Prairie, maybe they use it for something else, or maybe they use it around the Recplex. I'd rather see it go to something that exists than creating a half-mile trail that connects nowhere. So again, that's why I'm voting against it, not because I'm disillusioned to where this money is coming from or what it can or cannot be used for.
Supervisor Franco.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Ray, you had said that you are considering the worst possible scenario, I mean, the highest cost. So, in other words, it might be less than $973,000.
It could be, yes.
Okay. And let's say it's, 10, 20% less. It's theoretically possible then, if we got this grant, it would cover 100% of it, or darn near close to it.
So the sword cuts one way. So if the thing comes under budget from what was submitted, they still cover it 80% of it. Our 20% would shrink accordingly, but yeah, it gets locked in. So whatever we apply for and say what the project's going to cost when we make the grant application, that's what gets locked in. Mm-hmm. So that if it came in over budget, whatever the max was for the number you submitted when you made the grant application, that's the max the 80% of that is going to be the max. So that's why we switched from using kind of the nominal estimate to the worst case scenario, so that we can make sure that hopefully we're going to be covered if it does come over budget.
But ultimately, the amount would shrink, right, if it was less than 973?
Right, it would. The 20%, 80-20 split just shrinks proportionally. Yep.
If we don't get this grant, we're not doing this, right?
If we don't get the grant, it doesn't happen.
Okay, thank you.
Supervisor Belsky.
Thank you. I should have asked this in Public Works, so I apologize, Ray, but how was it determined what project we would do? How was it determined that we would select the U to 128th Avenue?
So in this case, why we picked it was because of all the development that's occurring on U, and, well, there's two intersections that are being reconstructed right now at developers' cost. The intersection at U and C is being developed, which is where this trail is going to hit and then take a turn south. And also the intersection of U and Q is being developed. And because of all the development then taking place on U, there's trails that are being constructed as part of those developments. So we thought from a timing standpoint, this would be perfect. Well, that intersection gets reconstructed. We can come in right after that, connect all these things together. It'll be a nice sequential way to tie. Even though it doesn't go further west at this point, it still completes a loop at that point. So that was why.
Okay. Any other discussion? We'll take a voice vote. Roll call. Okay.
Supervisor Franco.
Yeah, sometimes you don't.
Resolution passes 16-5. Resolution 124 from the Public Works and Facilities, Human Services, and Finance and Administration Committees, a resolution approving an intergovernmental agreement between the County of Kenosha and the City of Kenosha, amending the Health Department agreement, portions of County Trunk Highways K and H, conveyance of properties, and repair of the revetment wall, passed unanimously by all three committees. Supervisor Nudo, Pierce, Beth, excused. Supervisor Rodriguez, absent.
Supervisor Grady.
Move resolution number 124.
Moved by Supervisor Grady, second by Supervisor Belsky. Supervisor Grady?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A lot of these items that are included in this IGA have been talked about for years, on and off, back and forth. And this is conversations between the county and the city. And there's always been a bit of a difference of opinion on which way the particular thing would work out. But I think the larger salient points, besides the city wanting out of the healthcare agreement, is the construction of County Highway K. Originally, just in our committee and what we've done to this point, we're going to go as far west as 94th Court, which is okay. But with this particular agreement, we can actually push the construction out to 128th Avenue, which really would be better for traffic flow. And you see how incredibly busy Highway 50 is. This is the next east, west, north of that. So to have this in place as we develop, I think would be a very good and wise thing. Then the second large road work would be County Highway H from 158 to 142. And that would have its expansion and construction as well. There is a certain time frame that is a little bit unique with this document, can be delved into for your questions. And then some other orphan parcels, you know, a piece of retention pond in Forest Park that really is of no use to the county and it's actually somewhat of a burden. A couple other things, some submerged lots along Lake Michigan, which the county is responsible for. We took them in tax deed, and they have to be shored up. The city wants to do the work on this, so it was all kind of negotiated out. And really, it's a big laundry list and kind of a house cleaning thing that was done, I think, very timely, and the county ultimately benefits. It's a good document. So encourage your review and discussion. Thank you for your attention.
Any discussion? Supervisor Nordigan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this whole, the county trunk highways H and, sorry, I can't find the other one, K, is that what it is? Those are eventually going to be transferred over to the city. Then behind that, we have this agreement with them on the health department, with them removing $100,000 a year. I guess going from 700,000 to 600. This is all part of that same agreement, correct? So on that agreement, then when 2029 rolls around and they're paying 100,000, is that equitable to all parties, including Kenosha, City of Kenosha, of who's paying for the health department? How is that going? Are they overpaying so much now that they need to come down? I mean, how is this all working out? I mean, we're losing $600,000, and I'd just like to know what it is that's going on now, and what does this do then for all of the other communities in Kenosha County? I'm assuming the health department is a use-based product, and each of the municipalities would be charged on what they get used, or the time it takes to get out, whatever the case. I don't know what the ins and outs are. Is there any explanation as to how this money is going to be replaced?
I will just give you the broad strokes, and if you want additional details, we'll have administration speak to that.
Yeah,
but it's been the city's contention for a number of years that they have been disproportionately paying into the system. The argument, of course, is, well, there's more city persons utilizing it, and that it's been a contentious thing going forward. Other than just those general strokes, I'll refer to administration.
I'm sorry, what was I missed that part.
Other than just those general broad painting strokes, I'll refer the rest to administration, and you can discuss the details.
The way that the agreement is structured, it does taper down that contribution, $100,000 decrease each year. So that is something that the county can absorb into the levy without too much impact. And therefore, all of the other municipalities that we apportion to also are not being impacted as much. As Supervisor Grady said, this has been an area of contention for some time. We did not see that that was something that would be resolved in the future without potentially going to court and having legal fees involved.
I understand.
So because of the other items, the jurisdictional transfer of the roads, this becomes equitable because there's a savings to the county in the future to offset the loss in revenue that we're losing from the health department.
But in the future, I'm going to assume the city of Kenosha is going to be using patrons or citizens, residents, who will be using the health department.
They will, and we will continue to provide those services.
Okay,
What we have seen,
at $100,000 a year?
no, they're actually not going to be paying anything. City residents will be taxed through the county levy.
Okay,
Right now, they're partially taxed through the county levy and partially taxed
Got it.
through the city contribution through the city
so
levy.
this is equitable, so it's the same throughout the county then?
Correct.
Thank you. That's what I was trying to get to. Thank you.
Supervisor Rose?
I have nothing further.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? See none? Want a roll call vote or?
Roll call.
Resolution passes unanimously. Claims 27, DD Sites, personal property loss.
Refer to Corporation Council.
28, Alexandria Green, vehicle damage.
Refer to Corporation Council.
29, Randy W. Bond, vehicle damage.
Refer to Corporation Council.
The approval of the March 15th, 2022 regular county board minutes, meeting minutes by Supervisor Rodriguez.
Supervisor Rodriguez. Moved by Supervisor Rodriguez, seconded by Supervisor Gully. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any
Motion to
opposed?
adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, seconded. All those
That
in
was the
favor?
best motion all night.
Any opposed? We are adjourned.